During World War II, there were a number of executions which were carried out by the German army. The Wehrmacht rampaged across different countries, and the death squads followed them, carrying out mass executions of the civilian population. Millions were killed in the conflict, and there was a greater civilian cost than military cost, and people's lives were turned upside down. Hitler also viewed people who refused to carry out orders as deserters, and also traitors to his Nazi regime. Because of this, many men were executed themselves, despite being part of the German army, and one of those men who was condemned was Otto Schimek, a young Austrian soldier who had refused to carry out the executions of a group of Polish people. However, despite being included in the firing squad, this young man would become the victim himself, standing up for what he believed in. But because of this refusal, he too became a victim of the firing squad, and his story is one which should be known about. Join us today as we look at the execution of the German soldier that refused to shoot his enemies. And remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Otto Schimek was born on the 5th of May 1925 in Vienna, Austria, and he was the 13th child of his mother and father. The family were greatly affected by the Great Depression, and because of this they became impoverished, especially after Otto's father died, who was the main wage earner. Following this, Otto was required to spend more time at home, helping his mother, who was a dressmaker, and he had to help bring money in to feed the large family. He was not necessarily a religious boy, but he did attend church every Sunday with his mother. But as the Second World War broke out, Otto Schimek was drafted into the German army. Adolf Hitler had steamrolled into Austria years before, and had united Germany and Austria, and absorbed the country into his Reich or Empire. This meant that Austrians were considered Germans, and when the war broke out, many Austrians were called up to serve in the German army. This was the case for Otto, and when he was called up, he carried a cross with him at all times. He had spent a lot of time working with his family, so his drafting into the army was a great loss, but he did not have many friends. But in the local area he was highly regarded, and the neighbours all waved him off as he went to join his new army unit. He was just 17 years old when he became a soldier in the Wehrmacht, and to begin with he served towards the east in Bosnia, before he was then moved with his unit to southern Poland. Otto had deep reservations, though, about whether he could actually take a life with his weapon or not, and whilst he was allowed some time away on leave, he met with his sister and said he did not want to kill anyone, and that when confronted with the enemy, he would fire his rifle directly above the enemies, intentionally missing. But of course this was also dangerous. Otto Schimek allegedly said, "My conscience is clear, I will not shoot people. These people want to return home, just like me. This war is not Christian." He clearly did not want to fight for Hitler and his army, and this avoidance and behaviour was picked up on by the army, and because of this he was warned by the authorities. Refusing to follow orders was considered treasonous in the Wehrmacht, and they dealt with this in a number of ways, including execution. However, to begin with, Otto was imprisoned. He then somehow managed to escape his incarceration, and he tried to get back to Vienna, his hometown, and reunite with his family. But he was arrested in Czechoslovakia, and he was then beaten badly when he was arrested. The Wehrmacht threatened him with court-martial for desertion. However, they decided to try and give Otto Schimek one more chance. To test his mettle and to see if he was serious about refusing to shoot the enemy, the Wehrmacht cruelly stated that Otto Schimek would be tasked with being part of a firing squad. To prove himself to the army, he was to kill a Polish family, a father, mother and 2 sons. This family had been preparing food for the soldiers of the home army, and when captured they were accused of committing acts of treason, as they were willingly helping the enemy and providing them with food. Otto continued to protest and refused to shoot the innocent people, and because of this, his superiors then condemned him to death, and Schimek was to be executed for desertion and cowardice. It was brutal and swift justice in the eyes of the Nazis, and his sister said that the family heard about the death sentence, and that his mother then wrote a letter to Berlin asking for clemency and for a reprieve. But before the execution was to take place, Otto wrote home to his brother and said, "I am in a happy mood. What do we have to lose? Nothing, only our poor lives. They cannot kill our souls. What a hope. Today I'm going to heaven, where the Father is waiting. May God guard you, so that you will join me." On the morning of the 14th of November 1944, Otto Schimek was led from his prison cell to what is believed to have been the outskirts of a village named Lipiny, which is southeast of Tarnów. He was shot dead and was executed by a firing squad who were made up of German army soldiers. He was, in a sense, executed by his own soldiers, and it's not known exactly where he was killed. It may have been up against a wall or down an alley. However, following the execution, he was then collected, and his remains were then gathered up by the villagers and locals who had witnessed the execution. It's believed that these villagers then took his remains to the cemetery in the nearby village of Makowa, but the exhumation work carried out in the 1990s on an individual who was buried in his alleged grave stated that the remains there were actually of a man who was much older. Because of this, there was actually some debate as to where he was actually buried, but today it's considered that he was buried alongside other German soldiers inside a war cemetery in Leki Dolna. But today his tomb is considered a place of pilgrimage, and a marker reads, "Born in 1925, executed in 1944, because he did not want to shoot the Poles. May God take you in his mercy." Each year people visit the grave and lay flowers and also light candles, and Polish and Austrian flags are left near to it. There were some people who were stopped making their way to the grave, and communist militia then detained a number of people who were travelling to pay their respects to Otto Schimek. There is some debate though regarding Otto Schimek and the story of his execution, as some historians have criticised the fact there is little documentary evidence that has survived about his story, and also there are no witnesses around today who can corroborate the story of his execution. Most of the information was obtained by Otto's sister, and this is what is told today. But Otto Schimek was a man who did lose his life during the Second World War. He would never return home at the end of the conflict, and it's believed that his executioners were his fellow soldiers, as he refused to take the life of another person. He would enact this belief in combat, shooting his rifle nowhere near the enemy, which of course was dangerous, but his own belief was that the war was not a just one, and that he had no part in it. He was ultimately called up as he was Austrian, and Hitler had seized control of his nation, and he would have preferred to have stayed at home and to help his family survive their financial plight. But he met his end on a firing range, being shot by a collection of German soldiers who would condemn him for refusing to take arms against the enemy. The German soldiers saw this as immensely shameful, and for this, Otto Schimek paid the price. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.